Starting. Somebody has a microphone on.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. For those who are listening in from abroad on the other side of the world. My name is Henk van Duin. I'm the president and CEO of IFDC, the International Fertilizer Development Center. And I'm very pleased to welcome you all, those who are here in Shoals, Alabama, and those online, to participate in this webinar of today. It's an interesting day because we're launching the Fertilize for Life initiative, which is a joint collaboration between USDA, University of Florida, IFDC, and EMBRAPA and research centers in Brazil. I think that's a unique opportunity to learn from knowledge in the US, in Brazil, and abroad to work on a better world. We all know fertilizer is essential for fertilizer nutrients are essential to do so. Why it's relevant? And then I take us back a bit of our own history as IFDC. And we are here in Shoals, Alabama, for those who are physically present here, where we have nearly 100 years of fertilizer research experience. First was the National Fertilizer Development Center, and as of 1974, with the International Fertilizer Development Center and the National Fertilizer Development Center operating jointly on developing new products for the fertilizer market. Why IFDC was established? In 1973, we had the first conference, and the UN Food Systems Summit in 1974 was organized to address the main challenges countries were facing, especially abroad, in Africa and Asia, about access to fertilizer. Logistics was completely disrupted, global logistics was disrupted, and that caused major food shortages in many countries. Today, we are facing similar situations. There's the Russian aggression in Ukraine. We know that fertilizer logistics is distorted. We know that many countries in Africa and Asia and abroad are facing major challenges to feed their people because they were dependent on food imports, which are now distorted due to global logistic issues. And that means that more and more countries are looking for solutions to produce more food locally, to be less dependent on imported food. But we all know, to produce food, to increase agriculture productivity, we need to feed the soil first. And that's why it's important we have this group together and this initiative together to assure that academia from all different countries come together and address on how do we improve soil health, restore degraded soils, but especially how do we innovate fertilizers which are more sustainable and easier reachable for plants to produce more. Not only here in the US or in Brazil, where we have commercial markets where we can grow. There's a lot of support for private sector partners in the call today. But also replicate that kind of innovations to markets in Asia and in Africa. Because only then we are able to secure higher food productivity. There's a more innovative approach of fertilizer adapted to climate change and addressing the major concerns of the general public when we talk about environmental impact, which we don't want or want to reduce. So that's why the importance of Fertilize for Life and the exchange among academia is essential to innovate the landscape in nutrient use efficiency or fertilizer use efficiency. I wish you all a very interesting webinar. We will have 4 presentations talking about those topics we are just addressing. And I would like to hand over to the master of ceremony today. Chairman, may I ask you to take the floor and introduce the presentation.
Thank you, Hank, and good morning and good afternoon and evening to those who are joining us in other parts of the world. As mentioned, my name is Jeremy Adamson. I have the pleasure of serving as your moderator for today's discussion. I'm also the Senior Policy Advisor for Climate Change with the United States Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agricultural Service. So what we're going to hear today is reflective of an unprecedented collaboration of 60 researchers, as Hank mentioned, from IFDC, University of Florida, Brazil, EMBRAPA, as well as USDA and ARS, USDA and ARS. Fertilize for Life was born out of the global fertilizer challenge that began after the disruption of global fertilizer supply chains led to sharp increased fertilizer prices worldwide. So this work took unprecedented approaches because we have unprecedented challenges. I do want to highlight that this is following a meeting back earlier this spring, where we officially signed a MOU with EMBRAPA as a part of their 50th anniversary celebration. And this is the first meeting since that meeting. What we're going to hear today, we're going to hear about 4 research topics identified as a part of Fertilize for Life. The first topic is precision management, big data, and artificial intelligence. The second is biological products, soil biology, soil health. The third is new products, including fertilizers and biostimulants. And the fourth topic is more efficient use of nutrient sources. These 4 fertilizer projects will feature the work of 4 elite research institutions with deep experience in working in each of these key areas. But it's also important to highlight the work that we talk about in this program isn't only going to be shared with US farmers, with Brazil farmers, but there's global application as we think about better ways to use fertilizer. As you think about new approaches, new technologies. With us leading the example, we can make a real difference in sharing this information with our colleagues and stakeholders globally, including those in Africa. And of course, this work wouldn't be possible without funding. So I would like to thank our United States, US Department of State colleagues for their initial funding for this initiative. And would also like to thank our USAID colleagues for their support as well. But that said, as you'll hear today, for this work to advance and ultimately make a difference with farmers in the US, Brazil, and all over the world, we'll welcome additional input from external stakeholders to really make sure that this work reaches maturity. So quick housekeeping items. We'll have 15 minutes for each of the 4 presentations, which will be followed by additional 10 minutes for question and answers. And I will invite those joining us online to submit your questions to the Teams chat. And following the presentation, we will work through those questions as time allows. And I would like to start by inviting the first group, and apologies, paper got shuffled here. The first group, which I believe will present on precision management, big data, and artificial intelligence. Thank you and welcome.
My name is Emma Matcham, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Florida in the agronomy department. And my research program looks at site-specific nutrient management for agronomic row crops.
And my name is Ray Anderson. I am a research soil scientist with USDA ARS and looking at precision management for irrigation and nutrient inputs using satellite imagery.
We're really excited to be here today and share some of the work that our team has been doing to develop a project proposal related to using big data to improve farm management decisions across the US, Brazil, and globally. We're part of the Fertilize for Life initiative, and our team was given the topic at the beginning of this initiative: precision management, big data, and AI. But large-scale AI development really relies on having a functional database. So we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about our database development plans, which will eventually lead to being able to use AI tools at a large scale. AI requires a lot of high quality data in order to be translated, in order to translate that data into farm decision making. And our group is finding some solutions to utilizing the data that already exists for fertilizer management and translating that to farm decision making. So our working title for our proposal is the database of site-specific, user-driven fertilizer recommendations and methodologies. A couple key components of that title: site-specific. We know there's not one fertilizer management strategy that's going to work globally. And methodologies. One of the things that makes our database unique is that we're not just looking at the raw environmental and yield data coming from different trial locations. We're also looking at how different research groups across the world have turned raw data into recommendations and really paying attention to the unique methods used globally.
So a couple key points that we want to introduce in this presentation is how does our project improve nutrient management in the United States and Brazil? Leveraging off that first point, we want to illustrate how our frameworks and infrastructure can be leveraged to benefit people globally. And finally, we want to just really highlight and touch on why our team is very well positioned to implement this project.
So I'm going to start with an overview of how fertilizer recommendations are generated and what our team has been using to define optimum fertilizer management. We see optimum fertilizer management as balancing agricultural productivity and yield stability. As our climate changes, we're seeing high variation in weather events, rainfall, temperature, and also yield. And we're not just considering agricultural productivity within a single growing season, we're looking at stability and productivity over time. We're also interested in balancing that against farm profits and environmental impacts of fertilizer use. In general, field trials are used to generate data on yield, soil qualities, and growing environment and other management factors. These data are used to create optimum fertilizer rate recommendations in a variety of growing environments. But a lot of that data already exists. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how we plan to utilize pre-existing data sets in our research.
One thing I want to emphasize here is we recognize very explicitly with this framework that what is optimum in one location does not apply in other locations. So you can see some regions of the world, particularly with smallholder farms, yield stability might be more important than getting the absolute top yield. Other places, particularly those that have concerns with maybe nitrate or nitrogen pollution in waterways, in reducing or minimizing environmental impacts might be more important. And in some places it is getting the top yield or top profits. And so one of the key points of this framework is we're designing it to be flexible and something that can be built on in future projects.
Yeah, we're not looking for a one-size-fits-all solution, and we have a multiple model approach that we'll describe later that allows both researchers but also farmers to choose and interpret the results in a way that meets their risk levels.
So one of the things is I mean, in a nice theory, we'd have a straight line between field trial data and nutrient management recommendations. But in reality, there's obstacles and a windy path or multiple windy paths along the way. And depending on the location and depending upon the regulatory environment, the obstacles can differ between how we convert data into actionable recommendations and actionable knowledge that farmers can implement in their production systems.
This is a brief overview of our project. We view our team as developing a synthesis effort to combine knowledge across different nutrient management recommendation methods. And we want to integrate data and methodologies of previous research, focusing on corn, cotton, and soybean, and nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So we've chosen 3 crops that represent a large amount of acreage in most countries and a large amount of previous data. If we can find a way to integrate data across those 3 crops, we'll be able to have a flexible framework that works for a wide variety of other crops. And we're also focusing on macronutrients, since a lot of our fertilizer management on the ground is more focused on macronutrients than micronutrients. They tend to be more yield in a lot of our environments. We live, especially in the US, but increasingly in Brazil and globally, in an overwhelmingly data-rich world. We have a lot of data, and it's hard to determine how to translate data into decision-making. And we're trying to help producers filter through some of that noise in the nutrient management.
The one little caveat on this is we recognize very much that in many developing regions of the world, there are data that are lacking. And so one of the outcomes we'll talk about a little later from our database is we want to highlight maybe the climate spaces or soil types, soil spaces where data are lacking and where we might be better represented in other rounds.
Yeah, and finding ways to prioritize future data collection.
So, and in this process, we want to include farmers throughout the research process. We specifically designed in our proposal focus groups in year 1 to gather feedback from farmers about their needs and interests, and with additional resources to continue to future years. We want to use testing in year 3 to evaluate whether the tools and models meet farmer needs. And the prototype tool is we want to include output from multiple models, sort of similar to the realm of what climate models do with an ensemble approach. And this is designed to increase choice for farmers as compared to tools that provide a single recommendation. So farmers can maybe choose a model that maybe they personally feel a little bit more comfortable with, or which better suits their risk profile.
Yeah, and this is something that has united our team. We have a really diverse team of researchers, and all of us are very invested in including farmers throughout the whole research process. This is the initial flowchart that we envisioned in our first group meeting. We've already prioritized not collecting new field trial data and instead identified initially some data sets that already exist, including Global Soil, DB, NASA Power, and some others. And we've identified some of the types of data we're interested in, location information, weather data, other aspects. And we are using user feedback from the beginning to determine what type of data they're most interested in us utilizing in our models, because that's data that they might be able to access and feed into models in the future. And we envision creating a web interface prototype. Over time, we have continued to develop our data collection and management framework, and it looks like this now.
And this is a little bit simpler, but I think it shows the process a little bit better of how we envision the data collection and acquisition operating between the 4 institutions working together. And then we will have data wrangling, which will be housed at USDA and carried out by a technician there. And that will feed into two different features. It'll feed into Fertilizer database and API housed by EMBRAPA, as well as a static database that in a stable repository for global access and for potential future research. And that feeds into both our crop modeling efforts, as well as our prototype nutrient use efficiency user interface. And so with our first year of funding, the efforts that have already been, with our first year efforts, we're going to focus more on the data wrangling, because with big data, getting the data harmonized is the majority of the battle. And then getting it into a static database that can be leveraged for future efforts, I think will be a tangible outcome.
We're also really excited that our data wrangling methods could be utilized in other growing environments. So once we have a methodology that's worked for our team on this data set, we can see this being a model for expanding this type of research globally. And our static database folks will be able to contribute to the Fertilizer database in the future and use these databases to identify and prioritize research locations as well. Our year one project deliverables include a focus group report on farmer and agronomist needs for interactive fertilizer recommendation tools. We don't want to build a tool that's not meeting the needs of growers. Do they prefer something web-based? Do they need something that they can access without solid internet connection? And other details like that. We're also working on a protocol for utilizing data from yield monitors when multiple combines or harvest machines are utilized in the same fields. I work a lot with machinery data collection, and it's an efficient way to gather information from farms. But in parts of the Midwest and a lot of Brazil, we will see farmers use multiple combines at the same time, and it makes it difficult to incorporate that data into a database. So we're going to find some methods that work well for that can be replicated elsewhere. We understand that not everywhere globally is using this type of harvest machinery, but it's going to allow our data set to grow faster if we can find ways to integrate data from that. These are common machines in the US, in Brazil, but also in parts of Eastern Europe. In use chain 3, we're going to focus more on that API development and modeling for creating decision support tools. We'll also be creating that integrated database for future research. And at that point, once the data has been integrated into the database, we'll be able to create reports on the methodologies for harmonizing data across regions, across crops, and across multiple combines as well.
And I think really with the deliverables, one of the things we want to emphasize is it's not just in one model or one tool as an output, but it's just developing processes that can be translated to other projects and other regions as well, as development efforts continue to help expand optimal fertilizer use and to help fertilize for life in other locations. So the evaluation plan is really farmer-centric, and that was one thing that we're very proud of with the proposal that we've developed so far. And it includes farmer evaluation input and feedback throughout the years. In year one, we do have a focus groups led by one of our researchers at the University of Florida, and then at the end in year 3, we will have an evaluation of the tools and farmer adoption and where what changes might need to be made to improve farmer adoption in multiple regions of the world. And then with the global impacts, this is really different stakeholders and different organizations might prioritize different ones of the different bubbles here. But we really start with informed fertility management, and that can directly improve farm profit by reducing fertilizer use. But it can also improve soil health and improve ecosystem services, reduce externalities from fertilizer inefficiency, And that also can result in more climate resilient production systems and improve soil health. Also feeds into improving farm profit. And then a climate resilient production system, I think it's going to be necessary just to maintain current levels of profitability, much less to improve.
We also have some anticipated knowledge impacts. So we're hoping to create a model that can expedite future research efforts. And then we'll be evaluating that when we see researchers adopting harmonization methods that we pilot or contributing data to our databases. We'll also be able to identify gaps where additional data collection can be prioritized. And we'll be curious to see what adoption trends look like for some of the yield map data processing. I've been chatting with a lot of our colleagues that work on machinery generated data sets, and we have a lot of support from other global leaders in this type of research. We're really excited about our project. We have a great team, and we invite you to come invest in this research with us. Some of the highlights of our team include instrumentation experts and field agronomists, which will help us gather data and make sure that it's something that can be replicated in a variety of growing environments and with a variety of stakeholders. We have some wonderful modeling experts that can help utilize the data that our field agronomists and instrumentation folks gather. And we have an economist on our team who is here to help evaluate our work and help with our focus group, to lead our focus group efforts and evaluation plans at the end. So we have a diverse set of skills. We have a great team. And overall, our core team has 180 plus years of experience in nutrient use efficiency research.
And the other thing I will say is among our team members, we come from a wide variety of disciplinary backgrounds and training, but the one thing that is common across all of our personal research programs is we all directly interact with commercial growers, commercial farmers. And we really try to engage farmers directly in our research efforts, our outreach efforts. And so I think that's one real strong strength of our team.
Yeah, so thank you all for your attention today. We are really excited about this research project and look forward to hearing your questions.
Okay. Start with a question from the room here.
Yeah, I think so.
A lot of the fertilizer trials in the US and around the world that have been done, although they make good measurements of soil tests and yields and everything, they don't make proper measurements of weather, rainfall especially, and irrigation. How are you going to handle that with your data wrangling?
I think one of the things we can do from a weather, irrigation is would be tough to do, especially in a retrospective environment. But weather, we can use, there's a variety of climatic products, reanalysis products that we might use to harmonize the weather data when preparing trials across locations. So we don't, somebody did the met station a little bit differently or configured the temperature sensor a little bit differently, that might reduce some of that bias potentially and create more of a standardized comparison.
Yeah, and the whole room is mic'd, so we might point to team members in the room too. Wellington, do you have anything to add on the weather data component? I know you work with that a lot.
Yeah, we have many sources of data that we are currently using. So we have many sources of data. We know that the data is not perfect, but even the absence of data is something that we can use. So we are planning to use this like a NASA Power or other sources of the data and other groups. Also some weather stations that's available, networks of weather stations that we have in the US and also in Brazil. We are considering to bring together and create like some outputs from that and use in our project.
Do you have other questions from the room? I know a lot of you chatted with us about our research this week, so thanks for being here. We've got a question from Shija here on teams. How do you plan to account for new varieties and varying nutrient use efficiency across varieties? Do you work closely with industry that's primarily developing varieties for these major commodities? Shija, that's a great question. I'm really excited you're here in the audience today and that you have power still. I know you're in the path of Idalia. We are looking for industry partners right now. That's part of why we're presenting today. And we would love to talk to folks breeding different varieties for nutrient use efficiency and find ways to integrate into our database right now.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely the potential to get data from industry that can, where you have good control trials, but with different varieties and evaluating nutrient use efficiency, that would add power to the database that we're developing.
Yeah, a lot of the Land-Grant University variety trial information focuses on well-fertilized environments. So that's something that we'll need additional partners outside our team to integrate. We've got another question here from Garrett Hogenboom, also at UF. Can you elaborate on your crop modeling efforts? IFDC and UF have collaborated for many years on the advancement of DSS for yield improvement and UE. Are your efforts building on this collaboration? I'm going to pass that to Wellington.
Yes, a lot of work have been done, and for IFDC, between IFDC, the SAC Foundation, University of Florida, and the development of crop modules and solutions. And we have integrating all these systems and crop modeling. And so we are intending to use all this knowledge that we have developed for many years, more than 45 years on this field. So we are going to integrate all this knowledge in this system. So DSAT is core of our development. And so we are going to use the crop models and to integrate with the data collection and develop this system.
I want to, you're really underselling your expertise in this area. Prior to a few weeks ago, he was actually based here at IFDC and recently accepted a position at UF and is now one of my colleagues in Gainesville with a lot of experience both here at IFDC and now at UF. So he's able to understand who some of the important contact points are in this modeling space. He knows a lot about the tools that are available and some of their shortcomings and where we can build and add new knowledge. So we're really excited you're a part of the team. You're underselling yourself. Thank you so much for being here today.
Just to follow up on that, we also have a project funded by USAID with partnership with ISRIC. So that brings us access to database associated with the global soils. And then we are also using the DSET type model, DSET model and other modeling ensemble approaches for this project called Space to Place. And that covers countries in sub-Saharan Africa. But again, I see very good linkages between the USAID project and what's being proposed here. So I think that there will be opportunities to help improve the models, the databases, and the AI.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I know that IFDC and Wellington have been doing a lot of work with spatial modeling, and my background is in site-specific nutrient management as well, and finding some things that make different growing environments unique, and how we can translate that to improve management decisions. Thank you both. Do we have any more questions in the room or online? Oh, I see more. Okay. I don't use Teams very much, so thank you for that. No, I think we're out of online questions. Well, thank you all for being here today.
Thanks, Ray and Emma. Fantastic job. And again, congratulations to the group working on this project. Very impressive work done in less than a year. Fantastic. Looking forward to seeing things continue to develop. So I will now welcome the next presenter from the Biological Products, Soil Biology, and Soil Health, Ida de Carvalho Mendez. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ida Mendes. I'm going to talk about the Group 2 initiatives within this Fertilize for Life initiative. Our Group 2 works with healthy soils and bioproducts for improved nutrient use efficiency and ecosystem service. Well,
Sorry about that. Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, so the two pillars of our Group 2 are soil health and biological products. In these are the main strategies that we are going to use to reduce fertilizer inputs and improve nutrient use efficiency. So they are nature-based tools. Regarding healthy soil health, we know that maintaining healthy, biologically active soil environment have a positive effect on crop growth. For instance, here we have a graph showing the importance of healthy soil environments for a better nutrient use efficiency. In green, we have a response curve of fertilizer in a healthy soil. And in red, we have a response curve to phosphate fertilization in an unhealthy soil. The healthy soil, it has an integration of soybean with pastures. The unhealthy soil is only annual crop. So what we can see is that in the healthy soil, in order to produce the same amount, 2 tons of soybeans per hectare, we need only 3 ppm of phosphate fertilizer or phosphate residue in the soil. Whereas in the unhealthy soil, we need 6 ppm of phosphate in order to produce the same amount of soybean. So showing us the importance of the biological components in those agricultural conservation food. But how do I know if my soil is healthy or is unhealthy? How do I diagnose? Well, in Brazil, soil health assessments nowadays are based on 2 soil enzymes, beta-glucose-based and F-sulfatase. These 2 enzymes are used in routine commercial soil analysis. It's called soil biotechnology. And along with the determination of these 2 soil enzymes, we also calculate soil quarantine indices related to very important nutrient functions, soil nutrient functions, such as nutrient supply, nutrient storage, and nutrient trapping. All these functions are integrated in soil quarantine indices. And all the calibration of this technology is based on grading and soil chemistry. It means that by combining the punctuate scores of this storage function, which is associated with soil chemistry, and the enzymes function is associated with nutrient cycling, we can say to our farmers, their soil is healthy, is getting sick, is already unhealthy, or if the soil is under regeneration process. Healthy soils have high punctuations in both functions. So a soil that is getting sick, it has a high punctuation in soil organic carbon, it has a low punctuation in some enzymes. Unhealthy soils have low punctuation in both functions, and a soil under regeneration has a high punctuation in soil enzymes and low punctuation in soil organic carbon. And why is that? Because soil organic matter is less sensitive to detect changes as a function of soil measurement as compared to soil enzymes. Soil enzymes are more sensitive to detect this change. And today in Brazil, we know that we have 4 patterns that occur in nature. And these 4 patterns gave us like a 4-quadrant model. If we put here in a graph representation, enzyme activities in x-axis and soil carbon in the y-axis, we can see that healthy soil environments, they have high enzyme activity and high organic matter content. Soil environments that are undergoing biological degradation, that are the beginning of the biological degradation process. They have low enzyme activity, but still have high soil organic carbon. And if this degradation process keeps going, we have low organic matter, low organic carbon, and also low enzyme activity. So the environment, the soil is acidic. And if this unhealthy soil is under a regeneration process, the soil enzyme will change more quickly. So enzyme, high enzyme activity and low soil organic matter. So this is a 4-quadrant model that allows us, by combining those functions, to tell exactly to our farms how is the soil health situation. In the United States, the soil health assessments are based on the SHAPE. SHAPE stands for Soil Health Assessment Protocol and Evaluation. Is an initiative based on large data sets. SHAPE accounts for inherent factors associated with climate, and soil types. For instance, in order to develop the calibration curve for soil organic carbon here in the United States, SHAPE used around 15,100 soil organic carbon observations and accounted, as I said, for adaptive climate effects. And it's based on a statistical approach. It's a Bayesian statistical model. And by constructing this curve, this soil curve, the farmer can exactly know where he is in relation, for instance, to soil organic carbon. It is how is the grade that he gains in terms of organic carbon. So here is a 0.5. So that's how SHAPE works. But SHAPE, we don't have data SHAPE for the tropics yet. So we need to develop this scoring curve for our tropical environment. Another soil health assessment that people here in the US are using is related with the nematode community structure. And here's an example, but they also work with the 4-quadrant model based on the structure index in the complexity of the microbial community, of the nematode communities found in a specific environment. So environments where you have high diversity and high complex interactions, you have a stable enriched environment, and then if you lose structure, you have a stress enriched environment, and if this process of degradation keeps going, you have a completely stress and depleted environment, and then if you start in a regeneration process, you improve your structure index, but you still need to go more in terms of the dose. So you have a stable but depleted environment. So these are mostly the soil health assessments that we are going to work in our project. Going ahead to the 7th pillar, in terms of strategies to reduce fertilizer inputs and improve nutrient use efficiency, another very important nature-based solution is the use of biological products. For instance, in Brazil, we have an outstanding example, which is biological nitrogen fixation in soybeans. In Brazil, all soybean crops, we are talking about 40 million hectares, are cultivated without nitrogen fertilizer, based only on selected rhizobium strains, which brings us an annual economy of $17 billion per year by not using any kind of nitrogen fertilizer, and not mention that there is no environmental pollution, and the carbon footprint is very low. Also in Brazil now, we co inoculation with soybeans, with ready rhizobium and also with aspirin strains. So the soybean yield using co inoculation is much better than when you don't use this tube material. Also in corn inoculation now is a reality in Brazil with aspirin Brazilian strains. We can save around 25% of crop dressing nitrogen fertilization without giving loss. And also now we also have new products based on the utilization of bacillus strains that are able to improve plant nutrition regarding phosphate. So it's a product now is already being sold in Brazil. It's called nylon phos. with valuable details. Here in the United States, the use of biological products is not as widespread in Brazil, right? And that's something that we have to work with. Well, the main objectives in our project regarding soil health is to advance soil health assessments both in the US and Brazil. And we want to determine site-specific effects of agricultural conservation practices on biological, physical, and chemical soil health indicators and soil functions. And also to evaluate and improve dynamic assessments tools like shade, soil bio, the nematode ecological indices to quantify site-specific soil health response to land management. Regarding the biological products, we want to develop better fertilizer use efficiency in strategies both in the US and Brazil based on these products. Okay, here we go. Well, in terms of innovation for a global sustainable agriculture, regarding soil health, we want to work with metrics, development of shape models for soil organic carbon and for soil enzymes with data set from the tropics, for instance, with the data set that EMBRAPA has on soil enzymes and soil organic carbon. And also we will apply the 4 quadrant model developed for soil enzymes in Brazil, here in the US, incorporate data set. And at the end, we want to make a synthesis of these 3 soil health models, shade, soil bio, and the nematode ecological indices, into one comprehensive working model. See how it works, if we can use soil enzymes, for instance, as proxy of soil nematode community structure, and things like that. Sorry. In terms of innovation for a global sustainable agriculture associated with the biological products, we want to improve the use efficiency of fertilizers by using bioproducts in corn, soybean, and sugarcane in different producing regions of Brazil and US. And the continuous research is necessary to guarantee the success of these bioproducts under the different environmental conditions. That's why. Well, in terms of deliverables, for soil health, we are talking about a set of appropriate soil health indicators sensitive to detect management practice change, and also a validated soil health assessment tool for site-specific soil health response to management in both countries, Brazil and the US. We want to reach critical levels, adequate, moderate, and low, for better glucose days, aerosulfate, and soil organic carbon in tropical and subtropical soil environments. We want to at the end to have scoring curve for soil organic carbon in tropical and subtropical soils. And also we want to, this is a dream, to have soil health maps based on soil bio and shade associated perhaps with the nematodes community. So it's going to be really interesting to reach that. In terms of bioproducts, the deliverables are going to be improved crop-specific inoculant strengths and bioproducts and formulations for corn and sugarcane, both in the US and Brazil. Promising inoculants evaluated with standard protocols, which is very important in both countries, establishing the metrics for assessing these products' quality and also shelf life. Improved methods for field efficiency analysis of biological products, including a standard protocol to evaluate biological products in field experiments, which will generate a common database to make decisions. And at the end, we also want to have a protocol for best management practices for bioproducts and recommendations for growers using these products. The scientific approach for soil health, in both countries, we will be working in long-term field experiments and also in commercial farms. under contrasting soil conditions in terms of texture, soil types, and climate conditions as well. Soil samples will always be collected at 0 to 10 centimeters depth. This is going to be our diagnostic soil layer for soil health evaluation. And in both forms, the common soil health indicators will include chemical components, chemical parameters, pH, soil nutrients, soil organic carbon, and soil enzymes, especially beta glucosidase and allyl-CoA, which are the basis of the soil biotechnology. We will have some soil microbiome analysis being performed, and also those soil nematode community structures being evaluated as well. And also, and of course, taking into consideration some physical aspects such as the clay. Continue with the soil health, we also will develop shape scoring curves to interpret soil health indicators under tropical conditions using the data bank of EMBRAPA for soil enzymes. And also we will evaluate and validate soil bio and shape across a wide range of tillage and crop system management in these clays, PM soils here in North America. In terms of byproducts, we are going to have this Brazil-US exchange program implemented to synergize these binational efforts to test bioproducts for improved nutrient fertilizer use, even if it's in corn, sugarcane, and soybeans. New bioproducts will be tested in a series of experiments with standardized protocols aiming at reducing nitrogen and phosphate fertilization rates. These experiments will be carried out in representative production areas of corn, soybean, sugarcane, both in the US and in Brazil. And basically, we will have these protocols, these experiments, we will have response curves with and without the bioproduct to be tested. And the final deliverable is going to be soil health assessments and bioproducts validation in the United States and Brazil. And we believe that the research costs of these products have the potential to be applied in other agricultural regions worldwide. So here we have the team involved in this initiative, all the colleagues from EMBRAPA, University of Florida, and ARS. I thank you for your attention. It was very nice to be here, and I hope I can answer your questions. If you have questions. Let's see if we have a problem here. Well, we have a problem here. Questions?
Any questions from the room?
So we have questions here.
Perfect.
Okay, there's a question from Tim Williams. What are the critical factors that influence the safety strategy for determining soil health to validate the model? Well, the critical factors are the soil depth in the sample. So we have already standardized, which is going to be 0 to 10 centimeters diagnostic soil layer. And also the time of sampling, which is very important. So in Brazil, for the soil bio approach, the sampling time is always standardized as at the post-harvest of the main crops. So in those areas where we have corn and soybeans, it is double rotation, it's a double crop system. We always will collect the soil samples after the corn harvest. So it's always at the post-harvest stage. And an interesting point, for instance, regarding the soil bio approach is that we work with air-dried soil samples. We don't work with field moist soil samples because when you work with air-dried soil samples, it's easier to fit in the routine of the conventional soil chemical analysis laboratory, right? So another question here: how do you plan to account for new varieties and varying nitrogen nutrient use efficiency across varieties? Do you work closely with industry that's primarily developing varieties for these special commodities? Yes, this is very important, and we know that this genetic component is grow in terms of the success of the inoculation. So we plan to test as many varieties as possible of corn, soybean, and sugarcane. Can you elaborate on your crop modeling efforts? IFDC and UF have collaborated for many years on the advancement of DSS for you. I know this is another one, yeah. Congratulations. I'd like to know more about the corn inoculation with azospirillum. Do you have a long-term? Oh, yes. Victor Brazil. He wants to know about the corn inoculation with azospirillum. This is a long-term research ongoing in Brazil. Azospirillum strains were first released for corn inoculation in 2009, and now, after almost 15 years of the release of technology, we had a meta-analysis of all the data that was produced with corn inoculation with azospirillum and without azospirillum, and we know now that up to 25% of azospirillum inoculation can replace up to 25% of nitrogen fertilization in corn. So, yeah. And all this data is published already. So if anyone wants to send the literature reference, we have that in the page. I don't have any more questions here. So, yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic presentation. I just have a couple of quick questions. So I'll first start with the 25% reduction in nitrogen top dress application in corn. You also mentioned $17 billion saved annually in soybean application as well. Are you quantifying or tracking the emission reductions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have data. How many million?
200 million pounds.
200 million pounds?
By not using nitrogen fertilizer in our only soybeans, right?
Yeah, not pounds, tons.
That is a lot.
That's a lot.
Very good.
It's very cheap. Today, the cost of the inoculation per hectare is around $3
Maximum.
$3 maximum, as opposed to the price of the fertilizer.
1,500,
Yeah, $500. $3 as opposed to $500. Simple, it's easy to use, and doesn't pollute the environment.
Strong economic and environmental benefits.
Yeah.
And nature-based. You see, the neat thing about this group too is that all the solutions that they are proposed are nature-based. So we are working with the selection of these different materials with ability to promote plant growth and also to fix nitrogen, to promote phosphate solubilization. We are working with healthy soil environments, and healthy soil environment has strictly connected with the management system. So with the adoption of that management practice, you promote healthy soil environments. In healthy soil environments, you have a better nutrient use efficiency. You don't need to use as much fertilizer as you do need in unhealthy soils. And the whole thing is how to find out if my soil is healthy or unhealthy. And then we have the soil health assessment. In Brazil, soil bio is a reality. Our farmers already have the possibility of making these soil health assessments. Even in commercial soil laboratories, we have nowadays we have 20 commercial soil laboratories performing this analysis. In the US, I hope it will be a reality soon as well. And we want now to integrate the US approach and the Brazilian approach, and let's see where we can go. Thank you.
Thanks again and great job for the team and all their hard work on contributing to this presentation. I'll just say it's very interesting with some of the new bioproducts and the research that's going to be done and gaining adoption of bioproducts. There's a lot of proving ground that needs to be crossed here to really build confidence in gaining adoption for those products, both in here in Brazil, and this team's work is certainly going to help with that. So next, we will transition to new products, fertilizers, and biostimulants. This discussion will be led by Vinicius de Melo Benitez from EMBRAPA. Thank you.
It's a great honor and pleasure to be here to represent my group and show our project for this audience. I know that more than 100 people all around the world. And my challenge here is to convince you the importance of this project. The idea here is of our group is to develop new fertilizers based on residues and considering the environmental impact of these residues and also the potential if reuse these residues to use the nutrients of these residues to agriculture. Yeah? And so this is a spoiler of my presentation because I talk about the titles and fertilizers. For the background, I talk about the background considering the potential of the use of this fertilizer, these residues, and the environmental impacts they have. And the objective to help for this project to solve these problems. Yeah. And the central research question. There's a combination of organic and mineral fertilizer, as I show in the next slide. A few about methodology and the expected outcomes. So, most important thing here is to show the amount of residues you produce all around the world. And I got here some samples, yeah, from some examples of residues, chicken litter, the pig slurry, for example, in Brazil is very important, the sugarcane bagasse, but our focus here will be on manures in general, but our technology is not limited to manures. So it is a technology that can be easily adapted for all the kind of residues. And the main idea is only to try to transform these residues from the original form of the best way to apply in the soil, to transform in fertilizers. Fertilizers in the position farmers can use it easily using the machines. Yeah? And a big point, a very important point here related to the fertilizers, the residues, is the pollution potential. Yeah, over the 70% of pollution in the United States waterways is from non-point source. Yeah, and manures has a very important in this. And the phosphorus is the limiting nutrient for eutrophication of fresh waters. And when you apply phosphorus in a broadcast, for example, and have the mitigation and runoff to the rivers, you have this the more algae, you increase the primary productivity of the algae, and you have the eutrophication. It's a big problem. And another very important point is the greenhouse gas emissions. Here's the example of the pig slurry, for example. During the processing, you have the emission of methane, and after the application, this residues they are already used. Yeah? The farmers know how to use it. It's very used around the world, here in the United States and also in Brazil. But the way to apply is produce some problems. Yeah? In this case, the emission of, specifically for this case, for the pig slurry, the emission of nitrous oxide, for example, the loss of ammonia is very high when applied broadcast. And so it's not an efficient way to do it. So you try to do something better. That's the main point here. And there are other opportunities. There I talk about biomass, like residues you can produce in large amounts, like thousand tons a year, or million tons a year. But there are another opportunity to use residues to produce or to extract from the residues a special substance. For example, biostimulants, in the case of flavonoids, can be extracted from the fruit residues. And some organic materials you can get from microalgae production using residual water, and also from digestate from biodigestion. And other examples, the only examples here. That's a possibility you're working with to identify substance, potential biostimulant substance extracted from these residues into incorporating the same product you are preparing. Yeah. So, poultry, so the poultry production in the world because the poultry litter is our main case here. Is our starting point because it's a residue easy to manipulate, to use for fertilizer production. And now let's check the production of poultry in the world. The United States and China and Brazil are the main producers. Yeah, but this production is growing in other countries. There are some initiatives in Africa to produce litter poultry, and only they produce two countries, Brazil and the United States, have 2.8 million tons of nitrogen, 1.6 million tons of phosphorus, and 1.4 million tons of potassium only in the chicken litter. So it means a lot of nutrients. And considering the lack of nutrients for some for the world agriculture, mainly in Brazil, but in Brazil the consumption of fertilizer for nutrients is growing. Here in the United States, it's stabilized, but it's still a lot of nutrient demand. But yeah, you have opportunity here. So you have a problem, but you can transform this problem into an opportunity. You can use this nutrient and try to put the system to be available for the farmers to be used. That's the main point. And the other very important aspect is this production is growing. So you have a problem now, but this problem is to grow for the future. In Brazil, it's like the reviews to increase like 30% in production in the next 10 years for poultry litter. Because the poultry growing, the poultry litter grows in the same way. Yeah. So you have to be prepared for the future. You have a problem now, but the problem will be much more important in the close future. So the solution we are proposing for this is to produce organic mineral fertilizers. I don't know if the term is familiar for you, but the idea of organic mineral fertilizers is that products resulting from a mixture or combination of mineral and organic fertilizers. It's a very simple concept, and it can involve different aspects, different sources of mineral fertilizer and different sources of organic fertilizer. But here, our idea to use organic mineral fertilizer is to reuse residues. So our organic source are renewable source. Yeah, we're not talking about for use feed or other kind of research that's not renewable, but organic fertilizer here, or the organic source will be residues, mainly manure. Yeah, and as an example of the chicken litter mixed with monoammonium phosphate is a granule of organic mineral phosphate. And you are working with this. This is a reality in Brazil nowadays. Like the market of organic mineral in Brazil is close to $1 billion a year. Yeah, and it's a market growing very fast, faster than the mineral fertilizer, the growth. And in Brazil, China are the main countries where you can find it. In the United States, it's not common, yeah, to say organic mineral. Some colleagues that have never heard the word before. So I think it's more important to show the concept here. Yeah, the markets already exist. Yeah, there are many companies producing organic mineral in Brazil and China. And there are some problems there. So only to mix these two sources, there's no, you're not sure the mixture you work. Because depending a lot of the quality of the mixture and what kind of prime materials are you using, the technology you use. So there are a lot of challenges in an open window for innovation here. Yeah? And the first point is to improve agronomic efficiency compared to mineral fertilizers. Yeah, because our previous data show that you already have some very good organic mineral in Brazil, but that they are very close to mineral fertilizers considering the agronomic efficiency. Yeah, they have the same efficiency. Yeah, but it's possible to increase this efficiency, as I showed in my next slides. Is the central aim of our project. Adding new technologies, for example, by stimulants, but I will talk more later about this. But one point is to improve efficiency, comparing with the organic mineral fertilizers. Even if I have exactly the same efficiency, I already have a nice technology, because I have the way to dispose the residues, yeah, and to recover the nutrients in this residue. So that's very important. So, but efficiency, if you improve the efficiency, you can make this product more viable. It's very important now to see the viability. Yeah. And another very important point to increase the viability of this product is to evaluate the environmental value of these products and to add this value to the product. Because the environmental value is intrinsic to this product because you are using a residue. And you can also give numbers, because we don't have the numbers for the nitrogen, the greenhouse gas emissions compared to the broadcast application of chicken litter. So I'm pretty sure if you give the numbers for the fertilizer, you can add value to this. You can sum these components to make it viable in relation to produce the mineral fertilizer. But the last very important point here is to optimize the production process to reduce the production cost. But the cost of production is very high now, and in some cases it's not viable because the process is very expensive. And the IFDC is our best partner to do it. Yeah, considering your pilot plant. So the idea to involve IFDC in this project is exactly to help us on this to optimize the process. And here's the team. It's a great team. Our friend, we're good friends. It's a long time working together. Yeah, like more than 2 years talking about this project. And this team involves like different researchers, like chemical engineers, and some microbiologists, agronomists, and different areas for different institutions. Yeah, for some people from IFDC, for EMBRAPA, for ARS, and also for you guys, the University of Florida. And the methodology you're using is based on design thinking concept. The idea is because you have a limited budget and time, so you have to do the best with the money you have. So the idea is to make some cycles of ideation. What you're doing just now, you start like this week to make the first ideation meeting, where all of the ideas put on the table. You discuss a lot what's possible to do to increase efficiency, the other things. And so after this ideation meeting, you're going to prototype to produce the prototypes. Yeah. Here in the United States, IFDC will be responsible for this prototype production, and in Brazil, I will do my lab in EMBRAPA soils. And after the prototype, you distribute the prototype for different partners to evaluate these products. Yeah. In laboratory and greenhouse evaluation, agronomic evaluation, but also environmental evaluation. And after you have the results, you have to meet again and put everybody in the same room for the feedback the feedback meeting, yeah, where you analyze the results and you discuss what's good, what's not good, and so you can go for a new cycle. So the idea is to growing on the technological readiness level, and each cycle of this. And when you have something viable or feasible to transport for to upscale, you can go for the pilot plant production. And after the pilot plant production, you can go to the field experience. But here's the most extensive part of the work here. So what you can do now is only to make the cycle in the lab scale. Yeah. And so that's the idea. To increase the efficiency, you are working at the menu. Our first point is the chicken litter, and mix it from mineral fertilizers. Could be nitrogen, could be phosphorus. We are discussing it. Maybe phosphorus is good for Brazil, but nitrogen for the United States. It's a part of the irrigation meeting just now. But increasing with the cycles, new cycles around over the project, the idea is to add other additives to increase the efficiency of this. These additives could be biostimulants, microorganisms. For example, for group 2, they can send us some microorganisms. It's a very nice vehicle for microorganisms because there's organic mineral matrix, and also other products. For example, elemental sulfur. You know the oxidation of sulfur in this matrix is higher than the mineral ones, and also micronutrients. You can make like a complete fertilizer, not only PK but NPK, but all of the nutrients inside, and customize this fertilizer for different crops. So it's possible to do it as you have like a industry to produce organic mineral fertilizer. And a very important point of this project is the environmental concern. Or what's the effect of the fertilizer compared with the chicken litter for nitrogen volatilization and for greenhouse emissions, and also for nitrogen leaching, phosphorus runoff, and leaching, and everything in the way to increase soil productivity. So you have many researchers working on it in this project, where we have like this structure for natural nitrogen fertilization in lab and also in the field, but also some equipments to monitoring the greenhouse gas. And so the idea is to give the numbers, yeah, for this product. Is something new. I think something you don't have this in the literature yet. Something new. And another important point is the microorganisms or the impact of these fertilizers over the microorganisms in the soil. So you are considering also the security of the material, considering the pathogens and the antibiotic resistance microorganisms. It's a very important point because we are working with manure, yeah, and you have to be sure it's safe to use, but also to see the benefits that this material can have in the soil. For example, nitrogen cycling microorganisms, growth promotion, and in the way to understand the effect of this material over the soil health and also human health. And considering our structure for upscale, I mean to relate to the process, we have laboratory equipment. Here in Brazil, we have like some lab equipment in lab where you can produce in small batches of this product, of this material. It's nice because the equipment they have in Brazil is exactly the same block is using here. Yeah, so you can do mural, you can do the same thing you do there, you can do here. It's not our idea to change materials between countries. What you produce in the United States, you'll be used here. And what you produce in Brazil, you use there for the field, because I know it's quite complicated to send something. And after you have, as soon as you have something viable to go to the scale, you can use the pilot plants to produce in large scale. And this is very important because you can measure all the parameters of the production. So you can know very well what's it's viable or not, and what's the impact, the life cycle assessment will be possible to be done after all this information. Yeah? So what you're suggesting here is to produce a second generation fertilizer. Yeah? Because why is a second generation fertilizer? The aim of this fertilizer is not only deliver nutrients, but they also have some environmental effects. For example, environmental service is environmental service. So you're using residues. Yeah. And also social effects, because you can create like small companies, small industries. So we are recycling residues. It's a circular economy. We are reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We are also safely disposing this residue because we are putting the residue in the soil. Yeah. And we are incentivizing the local and small industry because you're talking about like small industry, like a big industry, like phosphate industry, creating jobs and economic growth. It's very important for where you already have these activities, but thinking in the future, for example, in Africa, when the activity of poultry production there starts, you'll be prepared to manage the residues there if you have this technology. And also to use in local resources. So it's very well aligned with some sustainable development goals, zero hunger, and the climate action, the clean water and sanitation, and also the responsible consumption and production. So that's the main point. And come with us to change the world is my message for business. Yeah, thank you very much.
Did your group consider what would be the target crop to go with this?
That's just now, but because I think it'd be maize in the first for the pod experiments, because the first cycle we are only discussing the pod experiments. Yeah, when you go to the field is another question, but I know there are some technologies that are more appropriate for leguminous plants and others more for grass. So for now, I think we didn't discuss it yet. It's a discussion for tomorrow, but I think maize will be the corn will be our choice.
Well, it's interesting because with the data that Yeda presented with the product that you have in Brazil, this formulation could be a Viagra for soil health.
Yes. Let's say you have very good interaction with group 2. So many things you can change, and many experiences you can change.
Yeah. In the long term, what we want to do is make designer fertilizers for every crop. You know, so for soybeans, it will be high in phosphorus and potassium and lower in nitrogen. For something like rice, we would have a whole lot of nitrogen in there and wheat. And so make it specific for each individual crop. For some places in the US, like Arkansas, where I am, where there's already a lot of litter, real high soil test phosphorus, we would want to use litter that's already been treated with aluminum sulfate. So it has very low phosphorus solubility, you know, so that you're not adding to the phosphorus problem, and you're mainly adding nitrogen to grow the forages with.
I'm glad you brought up that point because, for example, where we are in California, I believe, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state is also promoting the recycling of manure from the dairy industry, the mega dairy farms there. And because I didn't see that you consider swine and poultry, but not livestock like cattle, but specifically dairy. Because I know that's spreading some crops, right, Sudan, in California?
Yes.
The fertilizer. So that would be another one to consider.
There's no questions from here. Okay.
I have a question. Would you imagine a wide application window or, you know, post-harvest, pre-plant? Is there an ideal scenario you would imagine for maize, let's just say?
Yeah, but now in the project, we are working on the landscape.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm just hypothetically.
Yeah, definitely is something you have to consider when you go to the field experiment. Yeah.
Okay.
So, because it's a very important point, because you know, even in the pots, you try it. If you apply broadcast, the dynamic is different, especially because we talk about microorganisms developing. So I'm pretty sure you have some difference if you apply broadcast or if you mix it. There's no question here, but I was in the first of the discussions in Brazil. Our idea is to increase the phosphorus content of these residues because you have a product more used for agriculture. But here is the opposite. You have to decrease the phosphorus in the so you have to increase nitrogen and potassium. So it's clear for me now. Maybe you have like different solutions for Brazil and for United States. Sure, in the United States there are some place where you demand phosphorus, but there are some cases where the amount of phosphorus is very high, and you have to increase nitrogen and potassium to make it possible to be used there. Yeah.
One quick question, if you could talk about the applicability of this internationally, and also in terms of, you did talk about the fact that things would be local. How does that impact, for example, environmentally in terms of fertilizers being, for example, shipped across the globe? Would that have an impact overall?
Yes, so one of the main points of the project in the end, when you have the field experiments and all, is to compare to make the life cycle assessment and compare with other sources. So you have a lot of elements to show the organic mineral have some advantage over the mineral ones, because the logistics is very important. Yeah, and but you have to consider that the mineral source maybe can come from the other countries. Yeah, you optimize the use of local nutrients, but maybe it represent less than 10% of the total nutrients in the fertilizer. But it's a very important. Did you get it?
But Vinicio, conceptually, the other thing that could be done with the small farmers in some developing parts of the world is that they could have livestock that produces the fertilizer that can be formulated for crops. Yeah, for crops, and then have a circular, self-sufficient system.
It's a industry. I don't think it's possible to produce an on farm because you need we need cooperatives, like associations. Yeah, but on farms quite complicated because you can reduce until one scale, but it's not viable to make like very small. You know?
Can you speak to the production challenges? You mentioned that there's some difficulty with formulating the manure and the NPK.
Sorry.
The production challenges. I think you mentioned that there's some. Yeah.
The cost of production now is very high because the scale is low. Yeah, it's small. Yeah, and you know that's possible to increase the viability of this. Adding, for example, the time you spend to dry the materials. Yeah. So even there's one advantage here is that you don't have to pre-process the materials before to go. For example, chicolated, you can use chicolated direct to the industry. You don't have to compost first. So one aspect you have to, all of these things that you check to find the best way to do this as cheaper as possible. That's the idea.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't have a question, just a follow up on, we know there are 2 million tons of nitrogen, 1.6 million tons of phosphorus and so forth coming from chicken litter. The problem there is that having that equitably distributed is the major issue, because you can't transport chicken litter across different countries, whereas, or even within a country. If we look at an example of Alabama here, we are unable to move from one county to the other, not because it's not possible, but because of the economics. The transportation cost comes in. So what we feel that the approach we are taking with organomineral fertilizers, where we're adding values to the organic component, to the chicken litter part, adding more nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, or micronutrients, and also improving the shelf life and its transportability. So this will really make a big impact in terms of substituting chemical fertilizers with our so-called organomineral fertilizers. And therefore, that will also have a direct impact on the greenhouse gas emissions, because you will be producing less virgin fertilizers. So that's one major point that our project should be bringing up.
In Brazil, there's a concentration of production in one state in the south of Brazil, and the water basin is saturated with nutrients now. And it's close to the Itaipu hydroelectric. So they are looking for some solutions to take this residues out of the basin. So definitely, organic mineral could be a solution. And there's a very nice example for Oklahoma. Yeah. If you can
talk about that. There's been a lawsuit between Oklahoma and 8 Arkansas poultry companies that started in 2006, and it just ended this year. And the judge ruled in favor of Oklahoma, and it's in the Illinois River watershed, which is a 1 million acre watershed, where about 200,000 tons of poultry litter are produced every year. And basically, what they're going to say is no litter is going to be applied there. This is a huge opportunity for us, because if we could get a big grant from like the Walton Foundation, the Gates Foundation, USDA, and make a huge pelletizing plant there, and then move all of that litter, increase the nitrogen phosphorus content and move it all back to where those corn and soybeans were grown that fed our chickens in Arkansas for the past 30 years, then we would have that circular economy and move it back. And I think we can do this. I think that if we get some real skilled grant writers, we can, and I'm talking about a big grant, not a 10 million, like a $100 million grant, because it's going to take a lot of money to build this huge plant and develop this whole thing. But I think it can be done. I think we have an opportunity, but it's going to take a lot of folks to put something like that together.
Yeah, are there any questions in the chat?
There's only one here. Organic mineral is a great concept in the present day context. With nutrients, a complete fertilizer. How would you take care of the antagonistic effect between two nutrients, for instance, phosphorus and zinc in such products? Maybe there are some technologies to do it. Yeah, and for example, you can cover the fertilizer with a polymer, and you can add the zinc outside. It's possible to do something like that, but maybe it's not a good idea to put together. Yeah, maybe it's I don't have. If you have some antagonist effects, I will not use it. I can use all the nutrients is viable to be done there. So they are trying to do it in the mineral companies in mineral fertilizers to add zinc together from monophosphate, for example. And I think the big problem is this. But so as you have the evaluation and the feedback during these steps, you can check if the thing's working or not. So if it's not working, you're not going on these strategies. Yeah, that's it. Yes. Well, submit the dust.
Any questions? Additional questions? All right. All right, thank you. That's fascinating. I look forward to continue work on organic minerals as you all work to develop the business case, understand the economic, agronomic, and scalability and how we can build the viability of the product. So thank you. Thanks for the team's work on this. Well, we've now reached the fourth presentation, which is going to discuss more efficient use of existing nutrient sources, which is going to be led by Sarah Strauss, representing her team from the University of Florida. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here and wrapping up our session this morning. Thank you for sticking around for our last group. As I said, my name is Sarah Strauss, and I'm representing this fourth group, which has really been focused on looking at finding ways to be more efficient with existing nutrient sources. So, there we go. So right now in Brazil, the current system for production of soybean and corn or maize utilizes and is as follows: that in the I believe in the rainy season, the cash crop, the soybeans, are grown at the beginning of the rainy season, and that is continued throughout that season. And once those soybeans are harvested, they try and squeeze in an additional cash crop of corn or maize towards the end of that rainy season. During the dry season, which follows, most farmers these days some of them are using a cover crop of a single type of cover crop called brachiaria, or more commonly, they're leaving the ground just as bare fallow during that dry period. And then as the rainy season starts again, this process starts again where they plant soybeans and apply a lot of fertilizer. Right now, this production system results in about an average crop yield of roughly 3.5 metric tons per hectare of soybean and about 5.8 metric tons per hectare of corn. So this production and that yield is really due to fertilizer inputs. And so if we look at this figure of the total fertilizer per hectare of cropland between the US and Brazil, you can see that Brazil has skyrocketed in the last couple of decades, but in the US, it's more or less stabilized. And this dramatic increase in fertilizer is really due to increases particularly in phosphate fertilizer. So again, you can see Brazil has really dramatically increased in its phosphate fertilizer use, and in potassium fertilizer. So again, both of these fertilizers are really, really increasing in their use in Brazil to sustain these crop production systems. However, in addition to requiring a greater reliance on fertilizer imports to sustain that high use, this is really problematic because the nutrient use efficiency of these fertilizers is also decreasing. So the yields aren't really increasing. The yields are about the same, but it's requiring additional inputs of these nutrients to continue to have those yields. A lot of that increased nutrient application, that increased fertilizer application, is not necessarily making it into the crop. It's getting stuck in the soil due to a variety of conditions in these soils and what we could consider poor soil health. So you're having to add more to get the same results. And that's clearly not a sustainable system. I think we could all agree. You don't want to keep adding more just to get what you've been achieving. So our solution, our team has been working on a framework to look at these two climate smart practices, cover crops and integrated crop livestock systems, as a potential solution to make this a more sustainable system. Neither of these practices are brand new. Cover crops have been used for as long as agriculture has been in existence, but the scale that we're considering has not necessarily been used and is not necessarily widespread. So the way this would work is, again, this is our current system, or the current system right now in Brazil, where the cash crop of soybean and maize are grown during the rainy season, and the dry season is fallow or maybe has a single cover crop. But what we're proposing is that during the rainy season, things will continue as they have been with the 2 crops of soybean and corn or maize. But during the dry season, to introduce additional cover crops, and including the brachiaria that's relatively commonly used in Brazil right now. But we want to work, and part of our goal of this project is to work on identifying additional cover crops, particularly legumes, that can really contribute to some of those nutrients to the soil and provide a variety of benefits to that overall soil health that can help that system be more sustainable. In addition, we are thinking about, and we're proposing to also include, for some producers that are interested, this integrated livestock system component, where basically you're adding livestock to graze those cover crops. And so those practices together are really promoting a overall improvement in your soil health, adding a lot of resources to those soils, which will require less fertilizer inputs when you have that cash crop growing season during the rainy season, because those soils will be more able to recycle those nutrients and be more efficient in how those nutrients are made available to your crops. So you would then have to add less fertilizer. You wouldn't be able to completely eliminate fertilizer, but you're adding less and making that a more efficient and therefore more sustainable system. So these models are well backed by scientific research. As I said, cover crops have been around for a long time. Studies both in the US and Brazil, and there are a number of studies in other parts of the world, have shown that these systems can work and they can provide these benefits. For example, there's a Brazilian study that used this integrated crop livestock system that basically more than doubled the amount of nutrients added to the soil by having these, in this case, just grass cover crops, compared to the maize or the corn residue that was left and turned into the soil when that crop was finished. And not only that, it actually saved about $400 per hectare and cost by having those cover crops and not having to apply more fertilizer. And on top of that, this was an integrated crop livestock system. And so not only were they producing soybean and maize, but they're also producing cattle and beef. So you're getting multiple benefits. Oh, there we go. So again, not only does this system potentially save money, reduce inputs of fertilizer, but it's got a variety of other benefits. For example, like I mentioned, it's increasing potentially a stakeholder's income. It's basically diversifying their portfolio of production. You're getting not only your crops, but you're having your cover crops, improving your soil health. And if you're going with this integrated crop livestock system, you're also adding livestock to your portfolio of agricultural production. By improving your soil health, reducing your fertilizer inputs and making that system more efficient, you're improving your productivity and also increasing your resilience to climate change. There's a lot of research that's shown and that healthier soils are going to be more resistant to a lot of perturbations we're seeing with climate change. Not only that, again, this is a sort of a whole ecosystem approach that is really going to be providing a lot of additional ecosystem services, such as increasing your biodiversity of your system, again, by having these multiple crops going, and including your cover crops, improving water quality, and possibly contributing to carbon sequestration. And not only that, I think we've all heard the phrase that happy cows are better cows. And so this system, there's been some research that shows that animals actually prefer and are happier and do better in these integrated crop livestock systems. So on top of that, this is, again, I think thinking about this as a framework that can be applied to a lot of the goals that we are looking at globally. And this is just a diagram of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And this project, we're really excited because it hits a lot of these. Zero hunger, having more food security, a more sustainable agri-ecosystem. Certainly by improving your soil health, there's been research done that is showing that that's going to make that system, again, more resilient to climate change and reducing some of those inputs to the atmosphere that are problematic. Reducing nutrient runoff by reducing that fertilizer input is certainly beneficial for water quality. Again, we've mentioned that you can have a lot of benefits to having increased biodiversity in your system by having these cover crops, by having this integrated system. And of course, the fantastic partnerships that we've been developing here in current project and hopefully with future projects is really making this possible. So this all sounds lovely, right? And cover crops, again, this is something we're probably all familiar with, but the reason we're standing here is because these are not widely adopted yet. And so that's really one of the main focuses of our group is how do we figure out how to make these systems more adopted and what are the challenges that need to be overcome to make sure that these are increased in adoption. And so there are a couple of things. Yes, there are probably a lot of producers that are aware of cover crops, but maybe not how they can be integrated into their system. And so this general lack of awareness is one of the big hurdles. There's certainly a need to fine tune fertilizer recommendations to be incorporated into this integrated crop livestock system and cover crops. These systems are not going to eliminate fertilizer completely, but they will reduce it. But then you still need to make some adjustments as to how do you really maximize the efficiency of that system by using both of those types of inputs. We acknowledge that there is certainly risk with adopting these practices, and that's a very real thing and a very real concern for producers is changing their practices. And that's something that we certainly want to take into consideration and discuss with producers about that. There are still operational challenges and costs with cover crops, and so this is also going to be one of the things that our group is looking at is how to find more specific cover crops that are appropriate for different regions and really tackling that. If a producer has never had livestock on their land, that is clearly a challenge for them, and so that's another thing that we would want to work on and work together with them to make sure that everybody is comfortable with that system. And we also acknowledge that this is, again, as been mentioned by a lot of the other groups, all of these practices have to be tailored for specific regions. These are not one size fits all. These are overall concepts and frameworks that we think can be applied and tailored to different regions. So how are we going to do this? So our group has really proposed a framework that utilizes existing tools that have been developed by the USDA ARS, combines current research and historical research and new data, hopefully, in addition to combining that with interactions with stakeholders to really lead to the increased adoption of these systems. And so, like I mentioned, the USDA ARS has developed tools such as some phosphorus modeling tools, a calculator that is used to estimate the amount of nitrogen that is being inputted into your system if you're using cover crops. And so integrating those with new and existing data, with more data on specific cover crop varieties that would be appropriate for specific locations, more data on nutrient cycling that can be fed into these tools to make those more specific for specific regions. And we think that having those more specific data, that tailored information, working with stakeholders will help provide that information for them so that they have increased awareness and are more comfortable with utilizing these methodologies. And so that stakeholder collaboration, I think, is really important for this whole proposal and this whole framework, is making sure that they have the tools and the resources that they need to try and implement this. And so that hopefully, all of this, by having this increased adoption of these methodologies, is going to lead to increased fertilizer use efficiency, increase in agricultural sustainability, increased resilience to climate change, increased food security, and ultimately a dependence on reliance on foreign fertilizers. So like I mentioned, this is a framework, and we're certainly working right now on Brazil for this framework, but we envision that this is something that could be relatively easily transferred to other systems, and that we're really excited about this opportunity to expand our network. Just as an example, some of the acidic nutrient-poor soils in Brazil that we're focusing on right now are also found in Central Africa, and so this would be a direct translation relatively of our framework into these other systems. But it doesn't have to be limited to these acidic nutrient poor soils in the tropics. these are practices that can be adopted globally. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to take this framework and to take these tools into other areas. And so with that, we have a fantastic multi-agency team that's been working on this with colleagues from the USDA ARS, EMBRAPA, and the University of Florida. And this has been a really fantastic team that's bringing experience in cover crops, in crop breeding, in nutrient cycling, and livestock, and this integrated livestock, crop livestock system all together to pull these, to build this framework and to build on how we can increase the adoption of these methodologies. With that, I'd like to thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah. I don't think so. No questions. No questions. You're all great. I don't know about everybody online where you are, but. Oh, yeah.
It's very
Yes,
comprehensive.
right.
One just came through.
Okay, yes.
So with cover crops, are we gonna have to redo some of the fertilizer trials for like potassium and phosphorus with different cover crops, or how does that work?
That's a great question. Certainly, yes, that might be something that we need to look at. And so I think that's one of the challenges of integrating and getting these practices more adopted. Is that, yes, they're not going to eliminate the use of fertilizers. And so we are going to have to look at that a little bit more closely. Yes, sir.
Just me, have to.
Yes, Marcelo, please.
As you guys see, we have, we're actually directly points in common with the other projects, you know, with project 1, 2, and 3, you know, if you mapping harvesting, and if you use a cover crop, how it's going to impact the recommendations for the crop next week, the next season, and also the biological impacts and the new sources of fertilizer that we are trying to produce in project 3. So it's a really a big networking with already all the 4 projects. That's why we have this 4 for fertilizer for life, you know, and we need to talk and improve this exchange of experience between the projects.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Marcelo. I think there's a lot of integration between all of these projects, and we're really excited about that. There was just one question here, and I might need to direct it to one of my colleagues here, but the question is, one of the biggest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions is cattle manure. What would be the impact of implementing the ICLS compared to the emissions coming from mineral fertilizers that could be reduced by adopting this model? That's a great question. I'm going to direct it to my colleague who is a little bit more familiar with some of those details.
We do have some experiments in EMBRAPA evaluating greenhouse gas emissions in the grading systems. And what we have realized is regarding nitrous oxide, we can reduce up to 56% when compared to a conventional system. What do I know? What do I say? Conventional system without the forage grasses integrating with agriculture. And this occurs because the soil organic matter is much more increased in these systems, and this has a very important job in terms of not letting the NTO emissions increase. And this is published and we can make it available if you want.
Got a question.
Yes.
Based on the graphs that you showed earlier, especially on the increase or use phosphate rocks in Brazil, right, with not significant yield gain compared to US. So are you saying that Brazil soils is getting degraded faster?
That's a good question. Marcelo?
Pedro? Vinícius may have.
Yeah.
Greenhouse gas.
Yeah, but phosphorus.
Yes, about phosphorus.
Yeah, phosphorus, not greenhouse gas.
You repeat the question, John?
Yeah, well, no, so I was curious is when she showed the graphs of the high usage of phosphorus in Brazil, right? And we know that Brazil adaptations from those type of products are already being higher. But at the same time, the yield increases has been not significant compared to US. Why we applying that much phosphates in Brazil or fertilizer in general compared to US? Is the soils in Brazil getting degraded faster, even adopting some of those systems already?
Yeah, I think it's not related with, it's technically related, it's commercially. I think the price of the soybean, yeah, is very high. So the soils there is not, there are some soils there that are already separated. But what's happening in the United States now is exactly the same what's happening in the Western Europe, like a few years ago. And maybe in the future you have the same in Brazil. We start to see like the high fertility soils in Brazil now, but the farmers didn't realize it yet. They are using a lot of fertilizer because of the price the soybean is paying for this. And you have to consider that 70% of the use of fertilizer in Brazil is for soybean and maize. Yeah, so it's a very so that if the price is higher than $10 a bushel, then you add fertilizers. So it is what is happening now. But there are a lot of non-responsive soils in Brazil anymore, and you have a very nice paper published like 2 years ago all this legacy of P in phosphorus. So there are billions of dollars of phosphorus in the Brazilian soils that can be recovered. Yeah? But it's one part of Brazil. But there are another part of Brazil that you still have to add more phosphorus. There are more than 100 million hectares for the graded pastures you have to recover. So you have two very contrasting situations. But the reason for this, the shape of the graph, is the price of the soybean.
There's one more.
There is the land expense, because you are moving into new areas and therefore you're moving into areas that are very low in phosphorus.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot more phosphorus application to get that yield to go off that small scale, especially when you start looking at phosphorus in a high P fixing soils.
We've got two new questions online. One is for successful adoption of ICLS, what would be the typical size of farm for a Brazilian soybean producer to reach a break-even point? Then there is a second question regarding applicability to Central African countries. Do they have to be soybean producers to adopt ICL? I don't believe, no. So the soybean, the ICLS is not limited to soybean and corn. It can be integrated into other cropping systems. So that question I can answer. The question about the typical size of the farm for a Brazilian producer to reach the break-even point. Marcelo?
That's what we answer with the project.
Yeah, we will get that when we finish our project. Excellent question. There's one more question that says, Brachiaria is very good for N and K recycling. Is there any recommendation for other countries to use this plant for nutrient recycling? I don't know about recommendations, but yes, it is. It certainly has those traits, and I don't know about the growing region. I don't think it's going to grow well in certain climates, but certainly Brachiaria.
Oh, if you see on the distribution of oxysoils in the world.
Right. So within those ranges, it would be very applicable and potentially useful.
And we need to remember that all those plants are originating in Africa, so they're native up there.
Correct.
We expect them to grow well over there if they have the conditions to do it.
Exactly.
And they're being raised for, I don't know how long, are the big herds of herbivores over there that runs through Africa, South Africa.
Right. This is Brachiaria is Marcelo mentioned. It's been used for a long time, and cover crops have been used for a long time. But adopting them and optimizing them for our specific regions of interest and specific producers, I think, is one of the major goals of this project.
Yeah, and it's not the only one that works in these systems. Like in temperate regions, rye has been used as a inner seed of cover crop. So it's Brachiaria is certainly not the only one. In tropical regions, it works
perfectly, but in temperate regions, there's also other options.
Right, so that's again leading to the point that this is a system and this is a framework that could be adopted around the world. It's not limited to these tropical conditions. Yes.
Yeah, not really a question, but just trying to emphasize the link between the four projects. And thank you for your presentation. And thank you for the slides that show how the Brazilian soil, tropical soil conditions can help to expand it out what we've been producing here to the rest of the world. And the Fertilizer database platform is an integration platform under development and aim to gather the data from tropical soils and the recommendation, fertilizer recommendation for tropical conditions. And the integration of this database with GSAT crop models, it's a chance to fine-tune those cropping models and also the recommendation models for the whole world. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, can I quick question? The project 4 is a lot involves management practices, crop choices, cover crop choices, soil management. So it will be a key thing for you to connect with farmers and extension and consultant services. Have you discussed that in the group?
Yes, we have. That's an excellent point. And so one of the main goals of our first year of our project and getting started with this is working with producers both in the US and particularly in Brazil for developing some stakeholder surveys. We've already been working with a group from UF who also specializes in these large-scale surveys to get initial information on what are some of the specific challenges and concerns these stakeholders have. And then the other big part of this is going to be establishing and setting up field days in Brazil in different regions to reach directly with stakeholders. And I know that our colleagues, Marcelo and Pedro, have experience with some of these big stakeholder groups, and I think you call them, there's some fertilizer caravans and soil caravans that have been adopted widely and through EMBRAPA. So we want to build on those existing platforms and resources.
Thank you.
Let's have one comment. One of the objectives for this particular project is to reduce the fertilizer usage. In one of your graphs, you showed, just for an example, 4 bags of fertilizer on the down one. It could be very interesting and an ambitious target. The reason is you are introducing a cover crop, you are introducing livestock, you are mining that. Probably there are many other factors that can play. You are going to mine some of the nutrients from the soil and you are exporting some of those nutrients out of farm. How will it fit in reducing the number of bags?
That's well, so that was just an illustration. That's not a to scale kind of a model. But the idea is, and this has again been shown, like that figure that I showed from the study in Brazil, and we have a colleague on our group at UF who has been doing a lot of research on this integrated crop livestock system. That by having all of these inputs together, it does make that system more efficient so that the nutrients that you do add, the fertilizer you do add, is used more efficiently. So you don't need to continue to add more to keep your system going. And so it's an incredibly complicated system. And we don't have time to go into all the details here today, but it is definitely something that's being studied and being looked at. And there are a number of papers published that explain the dynamics of how that works.
Just an example, when farmers in Brazil, not ranchers, but farmers, grain crop farmers, they are very motivated to introduce livestock in their systems in order to take advantage of the dry season and having an extra profit out of the farm in the same area. So that's the one aspect that actually impressed us, that grain crop farmers were getting motivated in introducing livestock, beef cattle in their farms and having brachiaria in a dual purpose aspect, such as having a forage and then after grazing time, so selling the animals. So then it can be used as a cover crop for the following grain crop season, like soybean.
But I think the main thing is using these spreads. The key to production in the crop is organic matter. Doriana showed that in his presentation. Using all those practices, you are improving soils, nutrient cycling, organic matter on the site, and on the roots and the soil, and the CTC on the soil. So the idea of these complex systems is we are not looking anymore to a crop in a year. We are looking to a whole system. It's a different mindset that we need to use to get our producers sustainable production, because the people in the city mind that they're asking us how is produced the food that I eat, you know, and that's something very important. The key here is it's not a single crop, but the whole system, the sustainability of the whole system.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, and wow, what an incredibly impressive amount of work that. I just want to say this is one of the best examples of collaboration that I've ever seen. I think what you've done in a short amount of time is, again, incredibly impressive, and I look forward to seeing your work advance. And I think I speak on behalf of folks joining us online as well as in this room of the strength in this relationship, and looking forward to seeing it move forward. So with that, I will highlight that this presentation will be shared, so we will make sure that others have access to this. I know I'm looking forward to reviewing it myself, and would like to invite Hank up to make closing remarks. Hank.
Yeah, let's first give a big hand to Jeremy Anderson as our. As already said, we started something big. It's Fertile for Life this morning, or the last couple of months, as the project team were already working together. But that's exactly what we saw today in the presentation. A lot of innovative ideas from a systematic approach, because what I learned is going back to nature with the innovation power we have could be the solution for sustainable systems in the future. And the future starts tomorrow, don't forget. Not the future, the long term. The future starts tomorrow. Because many practices which were shown in the 4 presentations are already operating in some countries, or in Brazil, in some regions, or in the US, or even abroad. And I think that's exactly the strength of what we try to achieve in this collaboration, in this project. It's not only in this project, in the networks we have, we as individual institutes, USDA, University of Florida, EMBRAPA, IFDC, reaching out to other partners in our networks to showcase what we did today here and what we're doing with these 4 proposals in the panel here. And that's the strength of this collaboration. That's the strength of Fertilize for Life. And we can replicate this. Replicate Brazilian practices here in the US, and replicate Brazilian or US applications in Africa. And we saw already that from a soil health perspective, we see similar soil health problems in countries in Africa. We see a direct need of integrated livestock system, especially in the sub-Saharan Africa region, where livestock is a major sustainability issue for farmers to survive. And so integrated crop systems and also covering crops are essential. We have to move away from monocropping to multicropping. We have to go back to what our ancestors did when it was natural. And now, with all of us in this room and all of us online, we try to reinvent what our ancestors did in a natural way, in an academic way. And that's what the strength of collaboration is. Because we have very good examples which can contribute to increased productivity, to use natural available nutrients in manure, in covering crops, maybe even other enzymes, nematodes, bringing all them together in a much more holistic way to look at soil, to ensure that soils are improving, that health is improving in soils, which will assure that we have a healthier environment to live in. There's more food available than we have now. And that's, I think, what we learned from the last 4 presentations. I hope everybody online is still with us. It doesn't matter how big time zone you are, and we are going for lunch, that's for sure. But yeah, I think this is a great start. Let's continue, and especially those who are online. And Jeremy started that discussion already this morning, or when we started the presentation. You can't do this alone. Yes, there is seed money available to start it, and that we are looking at State Department offered that opportunity, but we reach out also to others online and in the room and outside our network or outside this room in our networks to chip in from the private industry partners, from government agencies and other interested universities or partners in this network to join us to make this happen. And it will be a journey which will grow and which needs more money. There were even requests for 100 million for a pilot plant in our but that's a different proposal, I can tell you. We need funding, that's for sure, to broaden our network, to broaden the results, and to especially to continue to innovate. And that's what we didn't discuss today yet. But the 4 groups presented, and now it's also up to us to bring the knowledge from the 4 groups together and to innovate even more than beyond the individual groups. So I thank you all. I thank you all online. And we are closing here. And those who are here in Shoals at the moment, we will go for lunch. Thank you all.